we all spend money in a certain way where it is almost unreasonable. Clothes, books, cars, watches, whatsoever. We also know it by the fact that advertisements and marketing exist in the world. If humans were actually rational creatures, we would not have advertisement throughout papers, Facebook, media, whatsoever. It's capitalism for the poor people, socialism for the rich. Because every time banks are crashing, they are bailed out by taxpayer money, and it goes for a lot of different things. Buy as much as you earn, never take that much of a debit, don't get 5 credit cards at once. Basic things. You don't need to have some rocket science of a situation for it. So it means it's a good indication that some trouble is brewing in the economy. So it's not just when onions and tomatoes are going expensive, it's also something like when biscuits are not being sold that it tells us that something is wrong with how the governments are functioning. Standard Oil. Standard Oil was a very big company in the 1910s. In United States, it was so big that the government decided to break it up. Namaste everyone. Today I'm just going to give a brief review of the book that I have read, which is So You Want to Know About Economics by Roopa Pai. Now, Roopa Pai is a children's author who has written about Gita, different Indian mythologies, but for a change, she has written about a slightly more technical subject, which is economics for children. So the first takeaway from this particular book was that humans are very emotional creatures who are suckers for validation. There is no better example for this than this particular ticket for a concert. If you can recognize the artist, it is Taylor Swift. If you do not hear it, if you haven't heard Taylor Swift, your children and your students are hearing her, so please do go ahead. The reason why this image was taken is that Taylor Swift tickets generally start from $100. They can go anywhere up to $3,000. By Indian rupee standards, that's almost like 3 lakh rupees. And in our mind of things, 3 lakhs for an hour of concert is something we just cannot imagine. But the truth is that we all spend money in a certain way where it is almost unreasonable. Clothes, books, cars, watches, whatsoever. We also know it by the fact that advertisements and marketing exist in the world. If humans were actually rational creatures, we would not have advertisement throughout papers, Facebook, media, whatsoever. This is one driving aspect of economics, which I love to focus on, especially given that even I am a sucker for validation, so I just keep on buying books to impress my friends per se. The second part of economics, which we should understand, is that there is no single way of looking at things. One tip I have with adults is that they think they know everything. So if I sit with my father, he will tell me about how great capitalism is, what led to the downfall of Soviet Union, how communism was meant to collapse. But the thing is, most places and most economies are very complex. Let's take an instance, United States, taken to be a paragon of capitalism. But if you actually look through the system, it's capitalism for the poor people, socialism for the rich. Because every time banks are crashing, they are bailed out by taxpayer money, and it goes for a lot of different things. So this is a really nice diagram I picked up from one of my favorite economists, who is Ha-Joon Chang. There's what he calls a Singapore problem. If you can see on the right end of the image, it shows that Singapore is one of the countries that is taken to be a great example of capitalism. But the truth is that more than 90% of the land there is owned by the government, and they have a solid welfare system, as far as I know. So it leads to a problem. You cannot just look at from one angle of things. You have to see what the government is doing. Is there any welfare state element to it? So this is the second part or takeaway from the book for me. The third thing that I feel was a major takeaway for me is that economies are, it's not something that is a very technical subject. It is something that is in all of us. We all understand it in some common basic way. Given that I am from a Marwari family myself, it's just dumbfounding to me how did my ancestors, who probably had no training at all, understand business altogether. And now I do understand, because it's a lot of common sense. buy as much as you earn, never take that much of a debit, don't get 5 credit cards at once, basic things. You don't need to have some rocket science of a situation for it. A good example of it is the sale of Parle G in India. Now you might want to think, what the hell does Parle G have to do with the Indian economy? It's a very simple thing. Parle G is one of the most consumed biscuits, which is the cheapest source of carbohydrates for a lot of people and a lot of children. If there is a dip in the sale of Parle G, it means that people are not consuming enough the single cheapest product that is out there. So it means it's a good indication that some trouble is brewing in the economy. So it's not just when onions and tomatoes are going expensive, it's also something like when biscuits are not being sold that it tells us that something is wrong with how the governments are functioning. Another element that I noticed while reading the book was you cannot separate economics from the study of power, and the example here is that of Standard Oil. Standard Oil was a very big company in the 1910s. In United States, it was so big that the government decided to break it up. And this is one of the images which is entitled The Monster Monopoly. Here you can see that Standard Oil is just taking control of everything. The banks, the parliament, the houses, the oil stations, everything at all. This is a situation we still see in a lot of different contexts. I don't need to name the companies. That's trouble for me. So that's the situation here. It's also situations with war. A lot of us know that there is war going on in Ukraine right now. It's not just a war for people, it's also a war between companies, because when war happens, arms are sold and it's profitable for everyone, right? So that is one instance where you see that economics cannot be separated from power in the first place. Last two segments that I want to discuss. The first one is the approach of the book, which is what I like to call Feynman technique. It just basically means that if there's a complex concept, try to break it in a way which can be taught to a 6-year-old child. If you cannot make a 6-year-old child understand it, maybe you have some gap in your understanding. Roopa Pai took almost this approach towards the book, which was great to see. That she cleared out really difficult concepts like inflation for children. One thing that the book could have been improved upon, and this is just an image, this is by Francis Goya. It is The Reason of Sleep Breeds Monsters. And honestly, there were times when I slept while reading the book, and some of the students who I gave it to also slept. The reason why was that it is trying to cram up a lot of different concepts in a single 130 page. You can only do so much. So it would have been a better approach, if I'm not wrong, if they just did deal with a few concepts rather than a whole crash course of micro and macroeconomics. Overall, good book for adults, but if you are going to suggest it to children, do ensure that they are advanced readers. So this is my review of Roopa Pai's book. Thank you very much.